ES Audio.
The Evening Standard Rugby Podcast with Lawrence Dallaglio.
Hello and welcome to this week's podcast. Now, there's plenty to discuss after a very exciting and lively opening weekend at the Rugby World Cup in France. So joining me in the studio, finally, Sarra and Steve Cording. Hello to you both.
Hello.
Good morning,
Steve.
Lowell. Yes, Sarah's been dedicated. She's been on the road already for 4 hours
Well,
this morning.
I'm glad you mentioned it, Steve.
Yeah.
Well, no,
Because I came in and Lowell was like, "You've been late," barking.
well, I mean, it's like a broken record these days. But what we're bringing our listeners is someone who's actually been there on the ground in France.
Yes.
So we're bringing, not like me, who's just been stuck here in London.
Studio in London. I will tell you about it now. A bit later on, Nick Purewal, the Evening Standard's rugby correspondent, he'll be joining us live from France to update us on all the latest going-ons from the England camp. But before then, we have got a very, very special guest to introduce. He's a proper rugby legend. Who wrote that, by the way?
What, you're saying you didn't write this script?
No, I didn't write that bit. That bit didn't go in. I hate telling him things that's going to make his head even bigger, but he is, of course. He's played both across league and union, captained Great Britain and Wales, respectively. Plus, he's also a great friend of mine and yours, Lawrence. It's Jonathan Davies. Hi, Jeff.
Morning, everyone.
Morning.
Good morning.
Sitting in his gaff.
It could have been on time, Sally. Could have read the script.
Okay, thanks for coming, Jeff. Unfortunately, we haven't got any more time to speak to you today. Great to see you in your lovely house.
He's the same. I don't care. Ta-da.
Clearly, it's not you that decorated that house because it looks very tasteful.
Clearly not me.
Clearly not you. Okay. It's been a cracking weekend of rugby. Before we go through some of the games and their talking points, should we talk about the opening ceremony then? I was there.
Were you?
Yeah. I don't think I've ever experienced such an atmosphere at a rugby venue. It was off the charts.
Well, it's funny, isn't it? Because the French, they've always had a unique atmosphere in any of their games. But they've been building this World Cup, haven't they? You know, certainly from my experience of being over in France the last 4 years, the atmosphere has been getting bigger and bigger and bigger. But that was something else. Absolutely.
It's always been the same. It's always been the same,
Yeah.
because of the bands and everything in the crowds. And, they only got the DJ there. The lighting's brilliant, the fireworks. They do create, and also they won the under-20, so all these boys have come through the last 8 years together. So they've really, really prepared. And I think I'm getting it wrong, these days, because I was actually watching it in a motel somewhere on the way to Bordeaux, right? And then my 84-year-old mum was in the ground watching the first game. Something's going wrong.
It was amazing. And I think for me, I've obviously never played rugby. I've certainly never played rugby to that standard. And I'm not a French rugby fan because I'm not French. But I was just feeling the nerves and feeling the emotion that those French players must have felt running out there.
Yeah, what did you think about the national anthems, though? Because there's
been a bit of controversy.
There has been a bit
there?
of controversy. Apparently, they are going to scrap it for the next round of games, which seems a bit of a shame, really. But it's not.
They just sounded squeaky to me.
It did. Yeah, I mean, the Marseillaise, when it's roared out, that really gets everything going, doesn't it? And it just sort of didn't quite fit in, did it?
No, it was a bit. Yeah. Well, they are going to change it, I think, now, aren't they? But the opening ceremony itself.
Yeah.
What did you make of that? I will never look at a baguette in the same way again. That's for sure.
It was very French, wasn't it?
It was very French. Jeff, did you enjoy it?
I think the French didn't enjoy it, but I think most other people expected that. It's very similar. You want to show everything, whatever country is opening the Olympics or the World Cup, you have to show, what is typically French. And we have to say they did that very well.
Yeah, I mean, listen, but there's a lot of people watching around the world that don't watch rugby very often at all. There's a lot of people maybe that don't go to France very often. So, there is a bit of an education for us. We're like cringing, going, really? But, listen, as he said, it was magnificent. And the enormity of that game can't be underestimated. It was massive. And the only thing that could go wrong is if the French didn't deliver. And in the opening half of the game, you sort of thought, wow, this could go anyway. And then suddenly the French, for whatever reason, got their big long arms around it, and New Zealand sort of completely blunted in the second half.
But look, let's not write them off. They did win 10. They did win 10 out of their last 12 tests coming into that game.
And look at South Africa.
Friday.
It's almost South Africa were well beaten by New Zealand in their first pool match in Japan, and people forget that. I mean, they were out of sight. Two incredible kicking game from New Zealand. They went away. They they've patched up their wounds and actually didn't play that well to get to the final and then played magnificently in the final.
Okay, well, all the home nations were in action over the weekend, all apart from Scotland celebrated a win. Lol, not to take anything away from the rugby itself, but there were some refereeing decisions we'll obviously come to in a minute. But before I do, I guess the results are the most important thing. And England's victory over Argentina, Steve Borthwick's men managed to put together a winning performance despite only playing with 14 men for all but, 3 minutes of that game. What did you make of their performance?
Well, it was a magnificent win, really, in the end. Much needed. You've got to give England credit. They came into the tournament with just no form. Steve Borthwick, before kickoff, saying, I think people have written us off.
See, I said that would be good last week, didn't I?
Yeah, I know, but they'd written themselves off, really, with those results. But, I mean, Argentina were the favourites for this game. A lot of pressure on England. And actually, as it transpired, look, we are always going to get contentious refereeing decisions in this World Cup. You know, we knew that this is the way rugby has changed, you know, and we got it in the 3rd minute. I thought it was a 50-50 call. I really honestly did. I'm not saying I got a load of abuse from social media because I'm English and I called it as it could have gone either way. But I think had that been a Welsh curry, I would have said exactly the same thing. You love a Welsh curry, don't you?
What does a Welsh curry consist of? Oh, it's half and half.
So listen, let's put that to one side. That it happened. It almost seemed to spark England into a reaction. Because, I mean, actually, I thought they started the game with a completely different mindset, even in the 2 minutes before Curry got sent off. Their line speed, everything about what they were doing said, this is a World Cup match, this is a competitive match, very different. So we now realise England are a side that can defend. You know, we were conceding 4 tries a game before that for a long, long time. And we can defend. We defended heroically. And in George Ford, they found, an absolute masterclass in how to play when you've got very limited possession.
He was a bit good, Jiff, wasn't he?
I tell you, he's a class act at 10, and I think that England, irrespective of previous results and everything, they are capable of winning that World Cup, right? If you've got a good set piece, good discipline, good defence, then they just showed with a man short how you win games. It doesn't matter how pretty you are, right? You know, how you play the game. If you win, it's immaterial. And that's what happened. It was a masterclass. They kicked their goals. They took their 3 points opportunities, right? And I think that was a mindset to go in. No, we're not going to play. We're not going to score many tries. So when the points are there available, we got to take them. Yet the red card, I think, it could have gone yellow or red. In the current climate, it's going to be a red with the pressure on the TMOs. The only thing about this now is, do you actually compete for a bomb, an up and under, or do you just wait and time it properly so you can lower your body? So you're taking away from the competition in the area because you could be sent off at any moment. So I can understand why they're putting these guidelines in place, and players have to be respectful of them. But ultimately, it's a contact sport, and you're going to get. I remember watching South Africa Wales in a warm-up game, right? And I think Rio Dyer went down the touchline. South African fullback planted, he lowered his body, and then the number 8 of South Africa went in behind Rio Dyer, forced the impact, clash of heads, right? He's in a lower position, yellow card for the South African fullback. There was never, ever a yellow card because he could not have done anything different. And I think that's what's going to happen in this World Cup. And you're going to get all them numpties on social media, right? Having a pop at everyone, right? The referees have got to be strong. They've got to have a little bit of empathy, look at it and make a subjective call on the contact sport.
I just think it's the game of rugby is tight. It's getting itself a little bit tied in knots because if you're head on head, invariably means that it's going to be escalated to a decision around a yellow card, red card, whether it was meant to be reckless or foul play or not. Then suddenly in the same game, George Ford is hitting the head, but only by someone's hip, and therefore hip on head or side of the back on head, whatever you want to call it, is not a red card. Yeah. So, and if you're a newcomer to the game, you're completely baffled and confused.
But it's also it's not the official's fault, is it? Because the other thing to remember, I mean, this is now such a high speed game. There are impacts all over the pitch. You're never going to pick up everything, and we're kind of expecting them to be 100% perfect,
but
aren't we?
I think what we just want is just consistency.
But the problem is
but it's
the game has never been consistent because
No.
the laws create this. Well, this is wrong. This is right. But then there's this massive area in the middle.
Grey.
And I think the grey has just got even more greyer with
Yeah.
regard to this. We're trying to speed the game up, so we've come up with a bunker rule, which I do think is appropriate.
Yeah, same.
But now we're getting other games, and we'll talk about that in a minute, where we're not even seeing some of the incidents taking place.
I mean, when we come out tomorrow, Tom Curry will have found out his fate because his hearing is tonight as we're recording. But I think it would be wrong now to overturn that red card because then you're saying the bunker system is wrong.
Yeah, because I don't think they will overturn it.
But
They want to make an example, won't they? Because it's
the entry point is 6 weeks and down. But I mean, obviously, for a tournament, they have to change the entry points, don't they? Because otherwise, he's not playing. He's not playing again.
Well, it's the same again, isn't it? If he goes to,
do they change it?
He can go to tackle school again, and he can do the same thing that Billy's done, and he can be back. He can be back within
6 games. He won't be playing the next World Cup.
I thought you said England can win, Jiff. Listen. I mean, listen.
It is a consistency issue, right? And it is about the health and safety. No player, when tackling and going for a high ball, wants to have head-on-head contact. You don't go in, competing for the ball, if you haven't got it, hoping you're going to hit your head against someone else's head. That's totally ridiculous. So, I understand it's all about player safety, but there has to be a little bit of common sense, and referees have got to have a little bit of empathy. And you're going to get all these newbies now saying it's about, you boys are archaic, you played in the old school. Sometimes you can't get your head out of the way because of the split-second impact. You've got to lower your body, that's it.
Maybe there should be if it was intentional and reckless, or if there was an intent to put your head there, then great. If it's accidental, let's just play on, because, that looked purely accidental to me. And I'll be interested to see. And this is what the QC, who's the England QC, is obviously match fit because he's obviously had a bit of practice recently.
I was going to say he's been a bit busy of late.
But I reckon he will argue that Elliot Daly might have been in the trajectory of the tackle.
Yeah.
Therefore, Tom Curry's unsighted. He might argue that the player was coming from Malia was so high in the air that the defending player didn't know where to put his head. But listen, that aside, England went on to produce one of the big World Cup performances with 14 men. First time they've had a man sent off. Argentina were a shambles after that decision. I've never seen them play that badly. They certainly won't play that badly again. Take nothing away from England, exactly what they needed. I said one result can change momentum, and it has, because now, all of a sudden, this is a team that could comfortably work on their game, rotate their squad.
They're the right side of the draw.
And they're the right side of the draw, as everyone keeps banging on about. And it's not their fault.
They're the right side of the draw.
It's not their fault that the other teams weren't playing that well and then suddenly are now.
The interesting about the 10 position now, Lolly, if Ford has a run at it and plays well, which I think you will now in the remaining games, because he's the best attacking 10 England have got. It'd be interesting to see what formation they will have then outside of the 10.
And Marchand and Tuolangi, which was the first time I think that combination's gone together. I mean, what we don't know is what England look like in attack. And they never really got that opportunity. But as you say, Ford will get better. Dylan Hartley, I see, saying that the more Ford plays at 10, the better he will get.
Definitely.
I think that's right. And Steve Borthwaite's got some decisions to make around the return of Owen Farrell.
Yeah, pressure's off.
Jiffy, did you think, just on the drop goals, I mean, you love to drop goal in your time. I mean, is it an underused art?
I think so. I was saying for Wales, in a tight game against Fiji, I don't think current players recognise of just keeping the scoreboard ticking over. And Wales had an opportunity, just scored, just take a drop goal, get it beyond, or just on the 14 points. Psychologically, makes it harder for opposition then to come back in the last 10 minutes. And players don't take it. And I think England's subconsciously changed their attitude when they were 14 men down, because they knew they can't create the overlap. So when the scoring opportunities came, they had to take them. And I think in tight games, everyone goes, we've got a penalty. Well, if you get in a position to drop a goal, what's the difference?
Yeah. Okay, so I know we're going to stay on kind of the whole refereeing decision subject now. Gregor Townsend, he wasn't very happy with, was it Creel's tackle, wasn't it, on Dempsey?
On Dempsey, yeah.
What's the take on that, guys?
That's a red card. That's if you got to go by what we've seen in the past, that's a red card. And how the TMO missed it is unbelievable. He has one job one job up bloke's got, right? If the bus driver taking the team to the ground doesn't do his job, you don't have a game.
If you don't take the dog out in the morning for a walk, then you're going to be in trouble with your wife. It's the same principle, right?
Crap everywhere.
Did the commentary team draw attention to it? Because I'm telling you now that as I agree with Jiff, that is a red card all day long. And I mean, actually, it's not even negotiable. There was no mitigation whatsoever. He's arrived upright. That is a classic. When we see the wording of why a player should be sent off, there's no drop at all. It's early in the game, admittedly, which is when players maybe are really pumped up. And it had a massive, massive bearing on the game. Even the South Africans, who love a little bit of Twitter about a refereeing decision, don't
they, Jess?
Even they could not defend that, but suddenly it probably went very quiet, didn't it, about Creel's incident?
Well, you found that a season, didn't we, in the Premiership, that if you guys in the commentary box weren't drawing the attention to the fact that something had just happened, it did seem to get missed a lot. You do wonder whether the TMO had just popped out for a cup of tea or something and wasn't actually watching.
Jiffy will tell you this. They're not supposed to listen to us, but they do, because if I'm a TMO and I've got only one pair of eyes in the room, if I've got 4 or 5 other pairs looking for me.
Do you think they listen to you guys, do you?
Well, they'd be stupid not to, because...
when they're in the trucks, they're in the trucks and they can listen to the commentary. So I think unless they've changed that in...
or they mute you.
Well, listen, they don't listen to the commentary. They don't want to listen to the rubbish we're banging on about. but listen, it was an incident. It happened early in the game, and you have to say that it probably had a big influence on the outcome of that game.
I think TMOs should be anonymous. They shouldn't be told who's a TMO.
What do you mean? Like, you should name who the TMO is?
No.
Why?
Because I think it's he is worried about this, and whatever they say, I think they are influenced by the post-match kind of comments on social media.
It's their job.
Well, some of them are, some of them are death threats in the past.
Which is awful.
So if you don't know who they are, they don't get death threats. So that's one.
Well, we see them now on the screen, don't we?
Yeah. Well, maybe we've got a point there. Okay,
what do you want to see him for? What do you want to see the TMO for? What is the point of that? Unless it's Brad Pitt or Angelina Jolie, who cares?
I tell you what, I'd pay to see both of those in the TMO booth.
They might do a better job.
Exactly. Sarra votes a referee after that. Now, listen, just on the rugby side, I mean, South Africa probably were the team that went into this World Cup with the best kind of warm up and build up. Do you think that, anything we saw from them, I mean, they sort of won without doing very much at all. It's just almost a bit of an old school South African performance where they just, out-muscled, Faf de Klerk doing what he does and not really having to do very much at all.
I watched them against Wales, and Wales had like kind of a second string out, but they were totally dominant. What they've done is, right, they've got a couple of special players in their backs. It'll be interesting to see who they pick, because that Moody is special. But they are absolutely ferocious defensively, and it's very difficult to make indentations into their defensive line. So what happens then is everyone tends to kick because they're not making any yardage on the post contact. So it'll be interesting to see how they scramble defence, because they haven't had to do it, but they've done that well. But they're just so powerful, and they bring the bench on. Scotland tried to be a little bit creative. They had a couple of opportunities which they missed, but it was always going to be a tough group for Scotland with Ireland as well. So
you got to kick well to beat South Africa, haven't you? And Scotland didn't kick well enough, I didn't think. I mean, I
think South Africa are a better side than the one that won the World Cup 4 years ago. Whereas I don't think, if you look at other teams, I don't think they're necessarily. I mean, Ireland completely different. They are without doubt, a very good side and better than they were, but. I think there's not many that are. I think a lot of the other countries have actually gone backwards. New Zealand are not a better side. I don't think England are a better side. Wales.
This is I think that with Scotland they've definitely improved, right? But with Finn, everyone says, he's mercurial and all right, but he doesn't make the right decisions in the bigger games. For me, he doesn't do enough decisions. As you said, Steve, when South Africa are coming up, you have to do the grubber. You have to turn them. You have to put their forwards, in their own 22. You have to put them under a little bit of pressure. They were chucking missed passes, and on a blitz defence, you don't want a long pass when someone's coming in from your outside to smash your ribs, right? So I think sometimes you've got to reassess where you are in the game and not try the miracle ball all the time.
was interesting, Rassi saying Rassi things after that game. Apparently he said, if we manage to win, meaning South Africa, against Ireland, then it will be a really interesting last round, because I think Scotland have the ability to give Ireland a go. Ireland will come with a strong team against us, but they're also playing Tonga, and it's going to be nice. That's such a Rassi comment, isn't it?
Should we give that the traffic light system?
Well,
That's a green or a red or an amber?
It's an interesting group, that's for sure, isn't it? Yeah.
We all knew that. That was always going to be the most physical group, so it's nothing new there whatsoever.
Yeah, and we always knew that, on form, Ireland and South Africa go through, and Scotland are the team that have got two chances, and notwithstanding all the other teams that they've blown one because they weren't good enough against South Africa, and they're going to have to beat Ireland to qualify.
Yeah, and I don't think anybody was surprised with the final score of Ireland Romania. Although I'm not sure, maybe many would have expected Romania to get the first try. I was outside with the kids getting a drink, and I could hear kind of everyone go, "Hey!" And I was like, "Oh my gosh, we scored early. Ireland has scored early."
Did you miss the start of the movie?
I did miss the start of the movie, yeah. But no, I didn't actually. I got into the stadium, then I went to get the children a drink.
You are correct. She's late for everything. She's late for kickoff.
The queues were really long. So we were there for ages. And anyway, we heard everybody cheer, and we were like, "Oh, have Ireland scored already?" And it wasn't. It was Romania. But listen, I like Ireland were pretty impressive, weren't they, to score that many points in that heat?
Yeah, Ireland are impressive. I mean, their attacking shape and structure is probably one of the best in the world, if not the best. It was all about getting Johnny Sexton back into the groove, having had a lot of time out. Andy Farrell wasn't worried about it. He's been there for every bit of their training. They looked in the groove. Johnny Sexton, what did he get? 24 points in the end. 2 tries, overtook Ronan O'Gara, which you'll be pleased about. World Cup point scorer for Ireland. Very, very formidable side.
And how good was Bundy? How good was Bundy Aki? He was pretty good, wasn't he?
He's going to be good against the tier 2 sides, because that's his game. So will that work against South Africa? Charge up the middle? I don't know, right? But they'll have to be at the very. The one thing I like about Ireland is they play a lot of effective, mistake-free rugby, right? And I've watched a lot of it now, because I've known Faz for a long, long time. He's got a good coaching group around him. I have to say that, the Sarra's husband there. Everything is so clinical, and that's why they're so effective.
And look, Sexton is the player that always gets the headlines because of who he is and what he's achieved in the game. But they're going to go far in this tournament, I think. But the key to them is not just Sexton. I think is Gibson Park as well. I think he's so important to the way that they play. It's crazy to think that 2 or 3 years ago he was actually the one on the outside of the squad. But the speed of their game, and particularly against the better sides as they progress in this tournament, those two. I know it says, it's like stating the bleeding obvious, but those two particularly are going to be so important. But I've now changed my opinion. If they can keep those two fit, they're massive quarterfinal. It's going to be against New Zealand or France. But if they can keep those two fit, they have enough to win the World Cup without a shadow of a doubt.
Yeah, what's the order of? Do Ireland play South Africa first before they play Scotland?
Yeah, it's the last game. Scotland.
They play South Africa and then they play Scotland at the end of the pool stage.
Yeah, so if Ireland win that game, that'll be a real marker. That game will be a real marker in this tournament. That South Africa-Ireland game will be a real marker.
Yeah. Shall we talk about Cymru then? Shall we talk about Wales?
Don't forget they're in the easier half of the draw as well. Wales.
Yeah, right,
you can't forget that, can we?
I was going to say that. Don't worry, I was. They're in the same half.
Can you say in Welsh though, Sarah? Because I have to confess that I watched some S4C over the weekend.
Did you? Did Jiffy and I convert you?
I was
with the finger slip on the remote. Or what?
I loved it. I didn't have a clue what was going on or what was being said. I was just about, forgive me if being an ignorant Englishman, but I didn't know that everybody in Wales was fluent in Welsh as you guys are.
Not everybody is.
There's the odd English word that sneaks in, like
especially
pizza and like
English. That's my Wenglish. Don't worry about
Wenglish. I want to see Sarah ordering McDonald's in Toulon in Welsh.
But if anybody wants an alternative view on the World Cup, I definitely recommend S4C. It's very good.
We had fun, Jeff, didn't we? We had fun.
But you have to wear sliders, do you? If you're a pundit.
Clearly, if you're an ex-international rugby player and you want to be on S4C, you have to wear flip-flops to present. Yeah, that's the given. And Mike Phillips and Reece Priestland rocking up in flip-flops. And
do you all have a go at each other like Dan Biggar does to all his teammates?
I love Dan Biggar. He was raging, wasn't he?
We all know moody fly halves. You work with one.
on a weekly basis.
But look, I just think it's brilliant. If I was a number 8 and I have been, and you're not playing well, your pack's getting smashed to pieces, you want to hear that from your fly half.
See, you think it's brilliant. Jiff didn't think it was
Not
Great.
all the time. Not
Did
all
you?
the time. Not all the
Listen,
time.
I like Dan Biggar, and he's a winner, right? He's a great professional, right? But ultimately, if he's shouting at me like that, right, going off half time, I am in his face. And I think that he's got so much respect in him. There's a lot of others a little bit more, a little bit quieter. I think there's a better way to do it, because he missed a tackle for this first try. Then he missed an easy kick for the penalty, which would put Wales in a better position. So, you have to take responsibility of your own actions as well. And no, I didn't see anyone screaming at him. So there has to be a respect there. I think his ways of doing it, get them off the field and all that. But also, right, if you're looking at it with Wales, if Wales are going to go far in this World Cup, they have to adapt. They are 230 tackles against 70. You give the best sides that amount of possession, you're not going to win any game, right? So when the ball came loose and Liam Williams, just before half-time, saw the opportunity, you got one guy on that part for Wales who can run the length of the field, and he was on the right-hand side, Rhys Samid. You give the ball to him, right? He could score. If he doesn't score, he could kick. So I think Wales had a couple of opportunities to express themselves and to play, and they didn't do it. So if Dan's got that attitude from the day one, right, he's going to curb everyone else's attitude to give it a go when they need to. So it's like a fine balance for me. When opportunities are on there, they have to play. And England will be the same. England will have to adapt their game from the Borthwick mindset if they're going to beat the better side, I think, because they're not going to outmuscle Ireland, they're not going to outmuscle France, and they're not going to outmuscle South Africa.
Here's a question for you two. I'm not going to ask Jiff this, but were we lucky with some of the refereeing decisions?
Yes.
I wasn't asking you. Out down.
I saw Dylan Hartley said that he put it down to the fact that the Fijians are they're too nice and they're too polite, and they weren't in the referee's ear as much as they should have been, because that's just their nature, which I guess you could say could be the case. And Wales were lucky, I think, towards the end of the game when Fiji camped on the half, and it keeps warning them and saying the next one. Fiji go down the other end, the first one, and it's a yellow card. So you're kind of like, well, that's a little bit unfair on them. But I don't want to take anything away from Wales. I thought Wales to win against a team ranked higher who'd just beaten England. Yeah. All the problems that Wales have had. I mean, Warren Gatland is clearly getting them fitter. They looked a lot sharper. Yeah. I love the fact that you can put a tackle in and pull somebody's pants down at the same time. I just thought that was superb, which you got to love. But fair play to Wales, and I wouldn't want the refereeing decisions to detract from that win.
I thought Jack Morgan was a real calming influence as well in that game. What did you think? He was?
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't able to calm Dan Biggar down, was he? But I mean, that's purely because he's not got that experience yet to be able to speak to his fly half and just say, look, sort your own game out and get yourself back in your box. But look, there's a lot of experience walks out that Welsh dressing room, before the World Cup. If you're an outsider like I am, I think they probably tried to hold on to some of those players a little bit too long. Mm-hmm. And so the rebuilding job for Warren Gatland has always been going to be a difficult one, because it's almost too close to the tournament. And I think his job now is to get the best out of this group that he's got in this tournament. And I think, that I was really impressed with the way that they reacted, because that easily a game they could have lost, and maybe even a few weeks ago they would have lost. You look at what happened against England at Twickenham, when England suddenly started to come back at them. So I think credit to Wales for what they've achieved. Like England now, they can move forward positively in this tournament and really think about what might happen. Yeah.
I think Gatland's in a win-win position, Warren. He's on a good contract. He's got young players coming in. He can, if they win, they've done well. He wins. If they don't do that well, he still win, because they've beaten Fiji. They've got a chance to go through. I think they'll fancy them against Australia. But it was a great game to be at, right? Most of the supporters were shouting for Fiji. I think the ferocity that those Fijians were running at were unbelievable, right? The impact of some of the tackles. Then but Wales were very, very clinical. They had their opportunities and they scored. They haven't done that for a long, long time, okay? And the kicking game was okay. But lucky, I think that the referee has to be stronger then. If the Fijians don't tell the referee to do his job, why should they? He should be doing his job properly. And Wales were lucky. They should have had maybe 13 men at one stage, maybe 12 men on the field, right? They should have, but that's not the Fijians' job, really. It's the referee's job and the other official. So Wales were lucky in that aspect. But on the other side, when that Fijian got yellow carded, I think that was a one straight away yellow card because he dropped the rolling ball, which Wales could have scored. So I think that was the right decision. But on the back of everything else that had gone forward, it highlighted it even more, it magnified it. But Wales were lucky. They should have had two other players in the bin. And then who knows what would have happened. They were lucky to win because they lost a bit of game management, which allowed Fiji back in the game, gave Fiji momentum, and in the end, one drop pass by one of their best players, and Wales win. It's that close.
Yeah, and do you know what is interesting? We were saying how interesting that South Africa, Scotland, Ireland group could be. I mean, the 2 bonus points that Fiji got could make this group very interesting
Scotland,
as well.
South Africa didn't get any bonus points.
And I just feel like, like Australia here, like Fiji could beat Australia.
Yeah.
Wales could lose. Obviously, we hope that that's not going to happen, but it could be an interesting group as well.
Yeah, Sunday we have Fiji, Australia. Fiji have to win now.
Yeah.
Massive for them. So
well, that's the biggest game of this weekend, isn't it? I mean, looking at the fixtures now, we start on Thursday. France, New Zealand should win easily, shouldn't they? Thursday, Friday. Yeah. Ireland to get more of a test against Tonga. Wales, Portugal, chance for Reece Sammet to fill his boots and start getting some more tries, I would think.
If Portugal win that, I'd check how many players have bought houses in Down.
Do you know, I asked we were talking post-match, I asked Mike Phillips about the next game, and Mike Phillips said, the only way Portugal is going to win that is if they bring in Ronaldo. That was his
Ronaldo.
Which one?
Yeah, exactly.
Which one? And then
anyway.
Samoa we'll see for the first time on Saturday as well. Looking forward to seeing them. They could be a threat, I think, to England with their physicality eventually. And then I guess you're looking at Sunday and Australia, Fiji is a standout game, isn't it? South Africa, Romania, you might not want to look away when you're looking at that one. And England, Japan, hopefully England to get another win.
So Jeff, before we let you go, what are your predictions for the latter stages of the tournament? Like, how far do you think Wales will progress? Who's your money on lifting it at the end of the day?
I think after France's performance, I think, and they might have a couple of players coming back, which will add to their kind of. I think that France was home advantage just after this. But the semi-finals, they've got to play Ireland in the semi. So, and I do think that England, Wales, hopefully will get to the semi-finals. Ultimately, it's got the winners will come from the other side of the draw, and it's on the day and discipline. South Africa, Ireland, and France are capable of winning it, right? But I think, for me at the moment, with a power and home advantage, I think it's just France. Just France.
Jonathan, thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to see you a bit later. And we're in studio a bit later together.
Pleasure of you all day, Teresa.
Oh, yes.
Listen, congratulations on all that cycling you've done as well, because
amazing.
I've never seen you so tanned in all my life. Look at you.
It was hard work. It was hard work trying to keep it going. But as you know, it's a great cause. We all do our different charities, and it's a pleasure to do it, helping out in a little way.
Yeah, listen, the amount of money you've raised for Velindre, Jeff, it's absolutely incredible. So
hopefully now we'll just tip the £45 million mark this week.
Wow,
amazing!
Well done.
You're a good man,
Fantastic.
Jeff. You're a good man. Right, I will see you later. I'll have a skinny caramel macchiato, please, on your way from Starbucks. Thank you. Okay. Thanks, Jeff. See you later.
Jeff. Thank you.
Jeff.
Bye. What a man.
Always a pleasure to listen to him and talk to him. He's one of the greats. You were right. He is one of the greats of both codes, and always very strong in what he has to say, and normally spot on.
Well, from South Wales to Northern France, it's time now to link up with the Evening Standard rugby correspondent, Nick Purewal. Hi, Nick. How's life across the channel? Very jealous of you being over there.
Hi, Steve. I'm back beside the seaside now on France's Opal Coast in the lovely Étape de Touquet. So everything's going well here. We travelled back from Marseille yesterday. So, yeah, it's going well, thank you.
Perfect. So you're back at the ground with the England training camp. What's the latest coming from there? And looking ahead to the weekend, I mean, what's the atmosphere been like on the ground? I mean, you're getting to experience it firsthand. It looked electric. I've heard quite a few people say that England wouldn't have got that kind of backing that they got in Marseille if they were playing at Twickenham, because it just feels like it's a more eclectic mix of fans who've gone to watch these games.
Perhaps, but it's also a World Cup, isn't it? Which changes everything. So I think that's the case for the players as well. They're actually very, very dialed in, very focused, and they delivered what they were looking for what they've been looking for a while on Saturday. So it's still limited, of course. It's still got issues to resolve, but they got the win, and that was the all-important thing. And speaking with the likes of Ellis Genge, he was just sort of explaining how he's a Bristol Rovers fan, so he fully understands the supporter experience of it. When your team loses, you feel like the world's caved in, and you have to rip it up and start again, and change everything. But he said that actually the players and the coaches have felt all along that they knew something like this was coming, and they delivered it at the right time. He sort of urged a note of caution, though, by saying that they don't feel like they've cracked it, but it's a good start and something to build on.
Yeah, it's a fantastic start, isn't it? I think England probably surprise result of the weekend, really. But you talked there about some of the chaos that the fans had to experience when they were going into the ground. I understand there is more potential travel chaos awaiting you this weekend. Is that right?
Yeah, well, as it stands, an air traffic control strike is scheduled for Friday, which is the main travel day for all the teams for Sunday matches moving around. So whether people will actually still and teams will still travel on Friday, it remains to be seen. The advice is to change your travel day. So most people are looking at travelling on Thursday rather than Friday, or to find alternative routes of travel. But the problem with trains is that they're already sort of oversubscribed. So if any England supporters haven't yet looked at potentially changing their travel, I'd urge them to do so. And the safest thing might just be to rearrange sooner rather than later, because they have to give 48 hours notice of the strike. But this gives a problem to World Rugby at the tournament organisers and in England as well, because ultimately, until the strike is confirmed, they're in a bit of a holding pattern and not entirely sure whether to stick or twist.
Well, Nick, it's been great to talk to you, and we look forward to catching up with you next week and talking about another England win. Enjoy the rest of your time there.
Thanks, Steve.
Well, that's all for this episode. My thanks to Sarra Elegant, Steve Cording, Nick Purewal, and of course to our special guest this week, Jonathan Jiffy Davies. And a big shout out to VoxPod Studios for hosting us. We'll be back next week. If you haven't already done so, then make sure you subscribe to the podcast so you'll automatically get every episode during the Rugby World Cup. Enjoy the upcoming games. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.
The Evening Standard Rugby Podcast with Lawrence Dallaglio.